trying to figure out how to get back to this screen that I'm supposed to be on. This one. Is this it? Okay, let's hide. Can't you hide that screen? That was a way to hide it. That one? Okay, I think we're ready. Perfect, thank you. Can you shut that door on the way out?
All right, great. Well, I'll start by introducing myself again. My name's Matt Rohr, and I'm with Abilla. I'm a sales engineer, with not technically a trainer, although what I do is typically a type of training or demonstrations. But I appreciate the list that Kelly sent out with some of the points that you guys wanted to learn more about in the marketing side. So I'm just going to kind of go. Say that again.
I think the 8 office attachment here now. We don't see what I want to fire it up.
Matt, were you hearing the background? Yeah, I was hearing the background noise too.
I'm sorry. I was having trouble hearing. Was that just background, or were you guys talking? Sorry.
Kelly, do you know if is there somebody talking loudly or Brian on speakerphone? It sounds like there's either somebody trying to talk or maybe just background noise.
Wasn't me and Madeline.
Yeah, I think it may have been down here. I got you muted now, though.
Okay, perfect. All right, yeah, I couldn't tell if they were just, all right, great. I'll keep moving then. All right. And maybe it's worth mentioning too, it looks like you guys are dialed into WebEx okay. Can everybody see my screen here with my mouse moving around? I'm on the marketing module here within netFORUM.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, what I was planning to do here for the next few hours here, or few minutes here, is to just go through each one of those points and just stop me if you have any more specific questions, or if you prefer that I dig a little more into something. I'll do my best to answer those questions. And maybe just to start off with, do you all use in any part of the marketing module right now, or are you guys brand new to it? Have you used it a little bit in the past?
I mean, some of our groups use just the email template part of it and send out emails individually. We've used the call to action, but it's been a long time for some of our other groups. We've imported prospect lists, but I mean it's been years and years since we've used a lot of that functionality.
Okay, all right. Well, let's. I'll kind of start at the beginning then. And from a very high level, I mean, this is the marketing tool is going to just allow you to communicate with your members or prospects, all the records in that forum. And before we get into kind of the specifics of it, at a high level, really the foundation of the marketing effort essentially is the query tool. Now, there was a few points that we might go into the query tool a little bit, but really the query tool is the thing that's going to allow you to find your right audience, to target the right people, and filter that out. Maybe just those in New York City, maybe those who have a certain demographic, whatever it is. That query tool is going to allow you to find those people. And then of course the template. The templates are the messages. So that's when you're going to manage the message that'll go out specifically for emails. And then above that we have campaigns and a call to action. And the call to action kind of brings together both a query for finding the right audience, and then the template for sending them the right message. And then at the call to action level, which we'll take a look at here shortly, is also the schedule. So when should those people get that certain message? And so you can set up those call to actions to have that schedule. So that's kind of at a high level the basic components of the marketing module. and I realize your bullets here that you gave me weren't in maybe a specific order that might make sense to flow through this, but I think what I'll try to do is just kind of go through this for the most part. I rearranged a few of them, but let me just hit this first one, then talking about the ability to unsubscribe and subscribe from types of email. So maybe first I'll show you what that looks like from a member perspective, and then I'll circle back and show you how to set that up. So on let's see, make sure I have the right, yeah. So this is a sample eWeb page here, the member-facing page, and there is a form that we have now made available for the eWeb. Typically, though, a link to this page would be on the bottom of an email. So if you guys send something out, below it you can put the link that says to manage your email preferences, click here. But whether they're clicking that link on an email or going to their profile to do it, either way, it really should take them to the same place. It's this page we have for communication preferences. And so with the communication preferences, it's looking at all the different categories of communication that you've set up internally, and then giving them the chance to subscribe or unsubscribe at any different category. So perhaps here I've logged in as Susan, and so perhaps she doesn't want to receive advertising, so she's going to opt out of that. But committee information, she's going to keep that, and maybe for that, the committee, she prefers to have her personal email used or a different email on file. So because Susan has more than one email address on file, one always has to be primary, but she can actually choose here that these types of emails should be directed towards this other address. So all of that is on her record. Once she saves that, really you don't need to really know or acknowledge that that's happened necessarily, because when you go then to market to Susan and other members, then the system is going to know that she's opted out of that type. So if you're just doing, for instance, just an ad hoc kind of running a list real quick and sending out an email, you might know that can easily be done through any list in the system. So for instance, if I find a list of individuals, and I'm just going to say, show me all the individuals in Virginia. So right from this list, you may be aware that you can send out an email directly to this list. This isn't really a formal campaign like I described earlier, but just kind of a quick ad hoc mailing. And so from this method, it's going to allow me to select what's called the mailing type. And as I would go through a number of things that need to be selected in this form, that mailing type is the thing that controls who should get it, who's opted out. So if I say this is advertising mailing, we can even see up here it has 536 people on the recipient list, and 534 have not opted out. So it's behind the scenes, it's doing that filter. When I've selected that mailing type, it's going to know that Susan and maybe some others have opted out, and so it drops those off the list. Then I just need to send that out, and you're good. Now, the same type of thing can happen, and I'm going to get a little more into the whole call to action screens and everything, but right now I'm just going to quickly go to one here that I have. Let me use my favorites. A more formalized campaign in a call to action, you get that same option. So from the edit screen here, and I'll go back and we'll go through some of these other things, but here's mailing type. And so in this case, it's membership. But if we change it to advertising, then obviously anyone who's opted out of that category would be dropped off. So that's how that's done. And where you get these values, these mailing types, is in a setup screen. If you're familiar with netFORUM, each module really has its own kind of admin setup screen that you can maintain, and as long as your user has permission to view that screen. But here under Overview, Marketing Setup, these are a lot of the drop-down lists that you'll see throughout the module. And right here, Promotional Mailing Type, these are your opt-out categories. And so here I've got some sample ones here as we saw, but if I wanted to add a new one, I simply click on the plus sign there, give it a name, and then that's going to show up. Well, if I say show online, then that's going to show up to where the user can modify it externally. But then it's also going to be available for staff to then send out per mailing types. All right, so that's how that form manages the opt-out, unsubscribe, subscribe. Any questions on that?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, all right, good.
So, sorry, this is Becky. I'm going to chime in here. Madeline, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was also thinking about the opt-in, opt-out. So I think it's interesting approaching it from, or the member approaching it from their own profile page. But Madeline, was the unsubscribe also about them being able to unsubscribe from an email to different things, not necessarily just going to their profile?
Yes, at the bottom of an email, an opportunity to hit unsubscribe and it not unsubscribe from all emails, just from that email type, or at least take them to maybe that screen or a screen where they make that choice directly from an email.
Right, and just one note, the way that we did this before they came up with the idea of having multiple types, there was there also is a global opt-out, which you might be aware of. We try to kind of not use that so much because there's a lot of email communication that goes throughout the system. But there is one place within the member's profile that you as staff could update. And where was it? Yeah, to just do not contact by. If that checkbox is done, then the system won't send out any email to that person. So it's an option. I would suggest that there's very few times when you actually want to check out, but I just wanted to make you aware of it.
So do you have the option for one of our members, if we send them an email through this, can they at the bottom of that email unsubscribe from a particular type of email? Or do they have to go into their profile to do the unsubscribe?
They have to go into their profile. There might be some, let's see, in that case, I know what you're talking about, how if you hit a certain page, for instance, it'll automatically kind of recognize that you're there, this is your email address, and I'm going to automatically take you out of that. I think there are ways to do that. I mean, it would be kind of a specialized process because the page would have to be built that then when somebody clicks that link would know that, okay, it's this individual, I'm going to take him out of that category. It can be configured, but it's not a baseline thing that you can just turn on.
Okay.
Okay. The next piece was about ability to easily grab new subscribers. So the idea here was with a widget for Facebook, the website, and this is another area where I'm not sure we have anything baseline that's going to meet 100% of this, but I'll show you what we do have baseline, and then we can kind of talk about possibly integrations that might pass that data back and forth. So again, as you might be aware, there are some fields within that form that can store that type of information. So Susan, for instance, could update social links that she would want to make available. So there's a form for this, Facebook, Twitter, so forth, to where she could track, have that information there. And the reason for this, the reason she might want to put it in herself would be because maybe that's a part of her directory. So the idea here was that, all right, so if Susan is in the member directory, I don't know if you guys use a member directory for what you're doing now, but if I say, so if I look her up, sure enough, so now I'm playing the part of another member who's kind of looking up, a member, and from here we can make available either from this screen here. I believe in the baseline case, it's actually if we dig further. Yeah. So if I dig further, now this is the information that another member could see about Susan, and then also follow her. So on Facebook or Twitter or any other data that she would like to put in there. So that's kind of the first area of just kind of, first of all, having the member maintain that, and then you as an organization deciding that you want to display that on a directory if it's available. And I know that's a little bit of a different twist than the question, but the other piece where we incorporate the social type information is when they're on an event page.
I think she's actually asking something different with that question. They want to gather new. They want to gather new prospects into their database. So, like an eWeb app for somebody to join as a subscriber to get like emails and mailings.
So how do you're saying you're kind of like downloading from, let's say, a LinkedIn group or something, and you say, all right, everyone in this, I just want to import into netFORUM. Is that the idea?
I think you just want to link to a form, fill out that updates the database.
Yeah.
That's a new record.
So, for example, on our website, a spot on our website where it says sign up for our newsletter, enter your email, enter your first and last name, and whatever information we say is required, and you become a subscriber to our newsletter, for example. So you are marked as someone who just wants newsletter emails. Or from Facebook, the same thing, some kind of just quick form that we can put on Facebook on a tab within our own headquarters page to sign up as a subscriber.
I see. Okay. So so that can be done, and it does take some configuration to do it. But what would be done is that from, like you said, from the main page, there would be a link somewhere. Click here to subscribe. And what I'm imagining that doing here is then simply taking them in. Let's see if I log out as Susan. It would really assume that they are getting ready to fill out a new account. I mean, it would be creating a new record in the system with very minimal information initially. Now, the way we do that typically before we allow people to create a whole new account would be to verify their email address. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. We could kind of, skip this step. But let's see, test. So it doesn't find a match. So it would really be a scaled down form for creating an account. Again, the baseline one here has your address information. So let's say that we get rid of that. We get rid of phone. You keep email in there. And then one other thing that would have to be done is that with the form, you'd have to add on to the form the field for opting in to a certain category to the newsletter, let's say, and default that to checked. And then that would be behind the scenes. The person doesn't need to see that, but it would be a part of the form definition.
Okay.
As soon as they would save that, it would come into the system, and they would be in there. So I think what you're looking for could absolutely be done, but it would take some toolkit work. It would be designing that form to do that, and then deploying it on your eWeb as a link somewhere. We don't have a baseline option for it.
Okay.
That's an easy form though, so, for us.
Yeah, so it's not too hard because there's not a lot of rules around it. I mean, it's just really taking a copy. What I would do is take a copy of the form that we already have and then scale it down a little bit and then create a link to it. Yeah, that's definitely doable. Okay, let's kind of go back to what, and this was one of the last bullets. I kind of moved it up to the top. Maybe this should have been the first one, but you talked about just having a little more information on setting up campaigns and using the call to action tool. So if on that, then that might set us up well to do the next couple things, talking about the template builder and doing A/B testing and so forth. So let's go back here to the stack view. So the structure again is that kind of at the top level you have what we call the campaign. And the campaign groups one or more calls to action within that. Within a call to action, you're linking to a template and a query. Now, within that also, you can segment further, which we'll talk about, and to do A/B type testing within that. So let's first create just a campaign here, just a very basic one. I'll go back and forth from this kind of sample one that I create, and then from one that is already kind of built out a little bit for us. So let's say this one has to do with the annual conference. Just as a, there's not a lot of information here. It's kind of just a header really that's going to group all the calls to action below it. Okay, so that's really just the header here, and then the call to action. This is really the detail. So the first one within this profile, we can create the call to action. The call to action is going to be, we can come up with a description. Let's say that it's going to be the first invitation to this to the event. The list type is controlling which type of record you're pulling in. Typically, this will be individual for a trade or for a professional society, even for trade orgs. So many times the individual object is used because it's really the individuals who are going to be clicking on that link and interacting with the website. So the list type is just that the individual. Data source, all right, so out of all the individuals in your entire system, which query do you want to use to filter that out? Now, if you haven't created the query yet, that's fine. You could do it here, although I would say that it's usually easier to create a new query from back from the CRM module. But let's skip that step right now and say we already have the query created. Here from the data source, it gives us a list of all the queries that we've saved. I'm just going to pick one here that says all members. And now we're linking to the correspondence template. So what do we want to say to those members? So there's an event invitation. Looks like we had one from either a while back. The mailing type, as I mentioned, is if people have opted out of annual meeting promotions, then this would drop them off from that list. So choosing that. You can use a seed list, so maybe some of your names would go into, and email addresses would go on the seed list, and then here I don't have one set up, but I could link to it and then say also send this to the internal staff on the seed list.
Can I ask you just a quick question as you're doing drop downs there? So I see, we're the correspondence or the mailing type that we're choosing, for example, is annual meeting promotions. So I just want to be sure that I'm clear. So that's assuming that everyone who's in the database, I guess I'm trying to figure out how do we determine who is in each of these lists? Is that what they are self-selecting? Or from the beginning, can we just say, everybody's in everything until they opt out?
Yeah, if you create a new category, let's even say you're really specific and say that I'm going to create a 2015 annual meeting promotions, right? So then chances are no one has opted out of that at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a way to kind of get around it, right? It's a little sneaky marketing, but nevertheless, then, right? So then you could select that, and you could decide even if those mailing types are either are even available online. So you can determine if they're going to show up on that page where that person can opt out. So you may have some mailing types like membership dues, for instance, where you're not going to allow them to opt out of their renewal template. So you might have available for you to select to say, hey, I'm going to do the membership one, but know that no one can opt out of that because they're not given that option online. So you can use these internally in that way.
Okay.
And then the schedule time here then there's some other things in terms of who do you want it to come from the user. So because I'm the user logged in who's doing this, my email address comes up here, but I could also have some aliases here, and I'll show you where that comes in. Maybe it's info at .com, whatever it is. But it could come from the executive director, let's say, reply to me, things like that. And then the schedule type. So is this going to go out immediate, or am I setting this up for a future date that's going to be a one-time scheduled, or even recurring? So if it's a monthly membership renewal call to action, then maybe you have it sent out at the first of each month, and the query is grabbing all the new people who are now expiring this month. But if it's kind of the first invitation, the sample that I'm doing right now, it kind of makes more sense to maybe have it as a one-time scheduled, where I'm going to say, okay, send this out tomorrow at 3 o'clock, and then they're going to get that.
Now, is that time set to wherever you are at that moment, or at always Eastern? Or I'm just wondering, like, if we were in how to know what time zone that means.
Yeah, good question. So I believe that pulls in a system date time from the server, and because our servers are on East Coast time,
Okay.
I believe the way that works is that now are you guys on? You're not on Central. Are you on East Coast?
We're on East Coast, yeah, but we travel, so I just wanted to make sure it didn't change if you were logging in elsewhere, or what it was pulling from, since it doesn't say.
Good point. Yeah, good point. So this would be Eastern Standard Time.
Okay.
Yeah, so you might have to adjust that if you wanted to go out. You're in California, you wanted to go out at 3 p.m. in California, then you're going to have to do a little math. Yeah. So that just kind of brings in that first call to action. Now, of course, if it was we had a whole plan here, then I would just cycle through that a couple times. I would create the next invitation that maybe goes out 2 weeks later, and the query could be very similar because the query itself could be dropping off those who have been registered since the first invitation. So the query, but the template might be different. So it says, hey, here are some great things that are happening. So that in the second one, we build that other template. And you would just keep building those call to actions to represent your entire strategy for that effort for the annual conference. As just another example of this, one that I kind of already have built out a little bit, here's an example of membership renewal notices. So I have several calls to actions here that are scheduled each month, and each one will hit a different group of members. So This is kind of under the concept that there's an anniversary membership. So during each month, you might have a group that is expiring and needs to renew. And the first call to action is looking for, in the query, it's looking for those that are expiring between 90 and 120 days. And we're going to send them a certain template. And then the next one will be, 60 to 90 days. So each month, they're going to kind of fall into maybe a different category if they fail to renew. But it'll give them that link to renew. It'll give them a chance to do that. So that's kind of the quick overview of campaigns, calls to action. And I know you guys wanted to learn a little bit more about the template builder. So if it makes sense to you guys, I'll switch and kind of show you that piece. And before I do that, any questions on what you saw here?
So I know one thing that Madeline had asked about was being able to, like if somebody doesn't open an email that they get, I think being able to maybe, or ones that have opened it, being able to find those easily, to be able to target them for certain other types of mailings.
Yeah.
So I know that it does track open rates. Does it track it per email?
So so there's a table behind the scenes that does have that information. I'll say that, as a marketing tool, netFORUM, just to be quite frank, it doesn't do a great job at making that information easy to get to. You can create queries that would look for a list of the people who have opened it. So that's a possibility. Let me do this. Let me swing back to that one because I know that was a bullet on the list, and really it's kind of knowing the query tool well enough to kind of join the right field so that you know how to get that information. But the plus side is all of it's really back there. In essence, if we know that there were 230 people who opened it, it also links back to the record, so we know who they are. It's just a matter of getting that back.
I'm pretty familiar with the back-end tables.
Say it again?
I said I'm very familiar with all the back-end tables and query tools. So.
Okay, very good. Okay, that will help. That will help. Let's swing back to that one now. With the templates, of course, this is an important part. We have for the template designers, we have an HTML editor that we use called Qt Editor, and if you build those a lot, I mean it's not the most powerful template builder in the world, but if you want to do it right here in the system, then it can help. If you want to select which editor you can use, you would go to My Preferences. And I don't know if you guys have seen this piece before, but from My Preferences, there's a link to the HTML editor. So one of the things, and I think we've changed this around a little bit in 2014, but if I, for instance, have that rich text box there, it's going to look a little bit odd. And so I just want to kind of show you this just so you'll know that setting is there. If I were to go into a template with that rich text editor, it's pretty basic at this point. So my internet's going really slow too. But here I could, I can make something bold or italics, underline. I could add an image, copy and paste. But that's really about it there, right? So that's very limited. Qt Editor has a few more options. Make sure that setting is there for your user. And then what I'll do, just for those who maybe haven't played around with templates, instead of using my favorites, let me just go into it this way. So from the marketing module, you can get to those templates through the template link. I could click Find Template. It can link based on the object or the type of template that you're looking for, or some code within that. I have a very simple one that has to do with advocacy, so I'll click on that. But here, notice the difference within the editor here. There's a lot more options. So, beyond just changing, the font and the size and bold, italics, and underline, I can do things like easily creating hyperlinks. So maybe this was linking out here. I have a hyperlink for writing a letter, but I could take really any text or button if I wanted to bring an image button. And just create a link there. All right, so now people could click on that and be directed to an external site. A few other things here. Of course, images are important to have your company logo at the top, or maybe a picture of the venue for an event. That's where inserting images would come into play. So right now here I have a bunch of images that I've already uploaded to this site. If we wanted a new one, I would click upload. Yeah. I'm just going to pick one of these here just for fun. Oops, all right. Now there is a size limit on there. Some of that is based on a system option that we have. Let me just pick out one that I have here. This one's cute. Okay, so I've got my little picture here. All right, and beyond adding those, then other HTML. If you're good with HTML, of course, just bringing that stuff in there, you can adjust it from the HTML side by adding tags onto it there. Other things here that this allows you to do is simply just changing, borders maybe, if that looks fun here. I'm just kind of clicking around just to showing you some of the options, but that's a pretty horrible template that I just created. But it does kind of show you the different options and how to use that tool. We also have the text version of it, which is nice. So the text version is sent out with every message, and it really uses the device based on the device that it's being sent to. It'll know which one to deliver. If it can't take HTML content, then it'll deliver the second text version of that. Okay, so that's the template builder. Here is where you can also decide if there should be a default from and to when this template is being used. You saw within the call to action how I can decide that for a specific call to action, but I can make that decision here too, and then it's gonna come in. So from the executive director, reply to the department manager, things like that. I'm going to cancel that. All right. So that's just the quick version of the template builder. One other thing that I'll mention in there. Let me go back there. If you haven't used templates before, one of the other things that you might be wanting to add in is merge fields. So the idea that we're saying dear, full name, and just personalizing that message, or having the event name come in automatically when you're inviting them to an event. So all of those fields based on the object. So here it's an individual type mailing, so it's going to have those fields that are connected to that object. So here within the field list, I can see all those, and maybe I'll just pick home address, and I just for lack of a better one here, it's going to link to that table. I can say the state. The nice thing is I don't have to know that the system sees it as st2_sta name, right? We're not asking you to be a database administrator and know all the backend names. So you look it up with the friendly name, it brings the code here, and then you can either copy and paste, or you can really just drag it down into the template. So then when that goes out, in this case, it's kind of silly, but the state name would appear there right next to their name. Any questions on templates?
I have just a question. I think I understand everything that you've done here, but to be clear, I just heard the phrase, if you're good with HTML, ... and then you continued. And so the answer, if you're not, is what?
Well, if you're not, then you have to build it essentially the way I did here, with using
Basic text.
Using the text.
Okay.
I don't know much HTML either, but I know some basic things, and sometimes I can do something fun back here. But for the most part, I'm using the editor as well. All right, so let's go back now to our campaign. We talked about the call to actions, the campaign. I'm going to link back using my favorites to go back to our membership renewal notices. This is the one campaign that I had set up. And I'm going to click Edit to edit the call to action. So in this case, we're linking out to the membership renewal template. But by the way, this is where you could right here in line with this to be able to edit that template. So it just kind of brings that in on that screen. All right, but based on what we've already talked about here, one other thing that you can do to add to this is using segments for things like A/B testing. And we have kind of a new way to do this here within our newer releases. Previously, if you wanted to send a separate message to, let's say, members in New York, you might have your entire list of renewals, but because we're linking to the query here, the data source and the template right here within a call to action, you'd really have to create a separate call to action so that your data source would kind of filter out only those in New York and on one hand, and then your other one would have to make sure that it's only focusing on those. So previously, you'd have to really build your A/B segments as call to actions. You'd have a 90 to 120 days A and then a 90 to 120 days B. And although you could do it that way, that's really not the best way to kind of manage that data from a marketing standpoint. And so what we've done now is allow you to, within a call to action, to segment that data. So let's take a look at that. So here, within this, I can say, you know what, I want to actually segment this group. And so I check that, and it wants to know how I want to segment it. So we give you a couple options here. We can do an either custom segment that would look at a field. Maybe you're doing it by gender or state, or things like that. Or the number of records. So number of records would be kind of like a random testing. And we could say, you know what, just give me groups of 10, let's say, and depending on how many you have in the list, we'll kind of determine how many segments you might want to do. But if I choose 10, for instance, now it breaks up. The system knows the record counts that would come back within that query. And so it creates segments for each one of those. Records 1 through 10 are going to be in one segment, and then so on and so forth. Now, if I look at any one of these segments, I can click on the pencil. And so maybe I want to test out a certain message to see if it resonates. And so notice within this, now I'm selecting the template for this segment that could be separate from the main template. So maybe here, my test template, let's say. That's not a one here for the segment, but I can choose a different one there. So that's one way to do that testing. Now, the other way to kind of do this beyond kind of a random selection with grouping the number of records if I choose custom, let's see, I'm going to remove all those. And then it wants to know, okay, all right, you want to do this custom, what do you want to create the segment on? So now I get, it's really kind of like a little miniature query tool under the where clause. And if you know SQL, then that's really, that's what that term came from. It's the where clause that's going to filter out certain records. So here I can click on the pencil and I can determine what that is. And if you've worked in the query tool, then you kind of notice this screen looks a lot like that. We're really using the same functionality to do that. So, you've got all the fields available here. Maybe I want to do it on title, title of CEO, let's say. So if they're a CEO, then they're gonna be in this. All right. So that's my first segment. And by the way, for the CEOs, maybe a different message resonates with them, and so they're going to get the CEO template. So I've designed that. And I would just go through now. The way this works is that right now, let's say I only have like 5 people in my list here who are CEOs. Well, those 5 are going to get this template, whereas everyone else will get the template that's on the main record. So it's smart enough not to leave anybody out. Nobody's going to fall through the cracks. But you would just continue making your segments for each one, each group that you want to get a different template. I could go create segment and say CFO or whatever. You could also do that based on state. So that's kind of how that segment piece works. Now, that's really one half of it, because the first half is creating the segments, creating the templates, the messages that will go to those people. And then the second half is really determining then if there was success and comparing then the results of renewals. Okay, so I went to these 5 CEOs. Did any of them renew? And kind of looking at those renewals based on that source code. To do that piece, we'd have to track some source codes along with this and then put those codes in the template. So here I don't have any source codes yet, but I can click on the plus sign. There is, just like we saw with the marketing opt-out codes, there is a place in the system that manages these. There's a setup screen where you can set up your source codes. Here I have a few samples in here. And so maybe this is one that would, I want to be with my, my CEO to type template. So I would just go through and kind of add these, I'm just picking a few at random here, but these would be my source codes that would be available. These can then link, so what I would do is go back to those templates and make sure that source code is then embedded into the template that I've defined should go to those CEOs. So that's the setup. It's after that, as it comes in, it's really using the query tool and any baseline reports that kind of look at that information to then determine if indeed that segment was successful. Any questions on that?
Does that answer your question?
Is anyone still out there? Does that put you all to sleep?
Seems really good.
Nope, here.
Okay. Moving on then to a few of the other things. There was a bullet about scheduling abilities. So I covered that in terms of the ability to schedule a call to action. And by the way, your segments will go out along with that schedule. So whenever this that schedule goes out, everything also will go out with the segments. Okay, moving on down the list here, this might have been what was mentioned earlier. So clear reporting. What link was clicked by whom? So like I mentioned here, we have a very high level how many were clicked or opened, but it's really not telling us who that person was. We're not really storing that on the record, but it is something that could be. It's something that's in a table behind the scenes that can be gotten to there.
So it'll record which link was clicked?
Say that one more time.
So it will record which link was clicked in the email, so if there were multiple links in an email?
Oh, yes, so it will, if you put a different source code to a different link, yes. Let me go back. Let's see if I have this here. So there's a add source code to all links, to where, let's say on a renewal, let's say you had a renew now button, or a link at the top of the email, and then if they scroll down, there was also one at the bottom. You could have each one of those going to this, embedded with one source code, and in that source code, then as they clicked on it, then it would know that click was a part of that source code. You could even go to a different level and have different codes per link. So this really gets into really granular to where you're saying, well, is that even important to have two links? Do people typically always click the top link? And so you could analyze it that way, where you would put different ones on each link. So yes, it is tracking the link. Let's try to go back and see where that is. I'm going to do one change here. I'm going to log out. Right now, my user doesn't have access to all the tables that I need, I believe. So I'm going to log in as my admin user just to make sure I have everything. All right, let me get back to I think it was a different one, but that's okay. So I'm just going to look at this real quick here to see where this information is coming from. So it looks like there's a table called Call to Action Detail, and it's where that is. So let's see, open account. The question is, if we can get this from the query tool, if it's currently linked to that table or not. If not, we have to make a special join to the table.
Right.
Let me do this. I'm going to take like 5 steps down this path, and then I may bail out though, and I may have to follow up with you. If it's something that I can't figure out how to link to the table now, what I'll do is I'll take some time after this meeting and try to come up with a query that would get that, and then just forward that information to you guys that would allow you to recreate it.
Okay, that'd be great.
Let me just take.
I've added new tables to queries to be able to query on before. So.
You've done that? Okay, good. Yeah, on the table list. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Now, do you? So maybe I need to ask you this. So within your table list, then, do you have the call to action detail linked to?
No, because we've never really used it. So
Gotcha. That's right, because there's not much data out there right now, so there wouldn't be much point in it. Okay, yeah. So.
But I mean, as long as it's in that table, then I can figure out how to query on it. So.
Okay, great. All right. Well, let me. I'll bail out of this then, and I will look at it just real quick after the meeting, and if there's some, foreign key or something that I need to give you to make sure that you're linking in the right way or something, I'll pass that along. But yeah, the data's there. I think sometimes we don't. The development team doesn't do a good job of thinking through. Well, okay, the data's there. How are people going to really use that? And so to have those links already there, sometimes it has to be built out to get to it. So. All right. Moving on then, ability to easily divide lists based on actions to perform more targeted messaging down the road. So I think this is probably goes back into the query tool or perhaps the segment piece would do that. Give me a little more information on that. You said that the example that you gave was those that click can be pulled into, this may be the click. Okay, those that click can be pulled into a separate prospect. All right, so maybe that has to do with the bullet above, right? Who clicks the link? Am I thinking about that correctly?
Yeah, that relates to what we talked about earlier with who clicked a link and how can we follow up with an email to them as opposed to sending an email out to that whole list again. So I think you covered that.
Okay, good. Yeah. And keep in mind too that if it's something, if they click the link just to view a page or to view some content, that's one thing. If they've clicked the link and based on that they've, let's say, registered for an event or purchased something, then you can actually filter people off the list who have purchased it. So, show me individuals who haven't yet registered for the event, right? Then each week, as you send out that new email, you're, it's getting a little bit smaller, the group that still needs to register. So those types of things can easily be built in there. All right, let's see. Must be able to use a vanity email address. So we talked a little bit about that within the template.
You don't need to
can
show us
change
that.
What?
I know how to do that, so it's easy enough to add emails to their user profile. So.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
you
on
can.
right. It's in the admin mode. That's perfect.
I just wanted yes.
There was a point here about responsive design available. And you guys are on the 2014 site. Do you how much of our eWeb do you guys use right now? Do you have a lot of our baseline pages that?
I mean, a lot of our stuff.
Or,
I mean, we'll take a baseline page and customize it usually for our needs. We have 9 associations on netFORUM product, or 8. So what we're doing now that we're in 14 is as we're modifying or building our eWeb apps, we're incorporating the responsive design. So the goal is to go through all of our eWeb apps and integrate them with responsive design somewhere down the road. So. But we
Perfect. That's the right thing to do. I mean, within the 2014, it's actually some benefit to you that you haven't built it out much with the ones before that, because within 2014, it's based on the Bootstrap foundation, and so you can really kind of have a lot more options in terms of that design. My demo site here even does it a little bit here as the screen gets smaller. It adjusts. And pretty soon, then it's all kind of lined up and configured that way. But we know and anticipate that for each customer, they're going to kind of have to go through that and decide, how you want things to be laid out and where you want the content to be. But within that 2014 release, we have a lot more functionality with allowing you to get to that responsive kind of holy grail.
What about the emails themselves? Are they mobile friendly?
That really goes into how you design the template.
Okay, so it's just based on what design we create.
Right, right. So if you put some big, image in there that's really wide, and then somebody's looking on that on their mobile device, and they're going to have to scroll over to see that. So, some of it's just the strategy as you build those templates to build them in such a way that you don't have to scroll over. You can imagine that they're on a small screen and kind of put that information just straight up and down. There was a bullet here about ability for dynamic content based on demographics, preferences, behavior, etc. Explain what you mean by that. What are you thinking about there with dynamic content?
It's a feature that we've seen in email builders before, where you can put in content, and then based on demographics on a profile, it decides whether or not that shows up. So, like I said, that was a super dream list. That's a nice to have, not a have to have. But just want to throw that question out there in case you've ever had it before.
Yeah, no, it's one of those areas. It can be done, but that's where it takes a little bit of. I shouldn't even say a little bit. That's where it takes some HTML knowledge, because from what I hear, and again, I'm not an HTML a programmer or anything, but there are ways to put conditional logic within the template itself to say, all right, if the demographic is this, then display this image, or display this text. Otherwise, display this. And so you can kind of build some of that in there, within HTML. We don't have. There isn't really a tool that kind of assists with that. You're really just on your own. In the HTML, you've got to build it.
Okay.
Let's see, the next one was about the survey feature. So let me think. Within 2014, we've enhanced, looks like I've logged out here. We've enhanced some features of the survey tool, allowing you to use some branching logic to hide certain questions, or possibly to require that one be entered in before it's submitted. So that is in the marketing module. What I'll do is I'll list an existing survey here. Oh wait, you know what? I'm in the wrong. I just realized I'm in the wrong site. I've got too many sites open. Bear with me 1 second. Have you guys used the survey tool at all in netFORUM, or would this be a brand new?
Brand new.
Never
used it.
Brand new. Okay. Just while it's logging me in, I would say the pluses and minuses. The nice thing is, of course, that you're all kind of. My color changed here. The nice thing is that you're all. You're in the same database as all your records, so it makes it easier to use that, the query tool to figure out who you're going to send this to, who you're going to make it available to. Again, we don't have a lot of those reports. It's very similar to the clicks in that what we haven't built out really is a lot of ways to kind of analyze those answers and kind of see it from a high level. You can, of course, see all the details, who answered what. But to get like a pie graph of how many people answered this way is, that would have to be kind of a custom report. Let me show you what we have here. So from marketing. Oops, there it is. Okay, so here's a basic example for an event evaluation. So at post-event, you want to send this out to registrants. You have, this is just a header, the survey profile. So you're going to give it a name, a type, and even a date from when it's valid from. Notice the options, if you've used any other part of the system, this one will be familiar, show on the web. So there's a checkbox to say, is this available online or not? Of course, you could have it digitally set up here, but if it's something to where you're handing it out a paper form after an event, then somebody could key this in and you could still capture it in the system. But the ideal is to show it on the web and have them respond to it there. So within the profile, then within the survey, you can have question groups. And so they could be, for instance, in this case, maybe questions about the speaker, questions about the location, questions about the content. When you create a group, again, it's really just a header that's organizing the questions below it. So there's not a lot of detail on there. Where you really get into the details, the questions themselves that are attached to that group. So here I've got rate the speaker's knowledge. So this is a drop-down list. Or did you get a clear answer to your questions? That's a flag. So there's a couple different answer types that can be added here. Let's go ahead and add a survey question, and we'll take a look at that. So you put the text here. And these are all the types. So you can use checkbox with multi-pick. So which services did you use? And they can pick more than one, but it's still part of that same question. Maybe the currency, how much did you pay for this year, or how much did you save this year, or something like that. The date, when did you attend? Decimal is just really another type of currency. You just display it a little bit different. You can do a single select if it applies. List box, multi-pick. So it's very, very similar to checkbox multi-pick. It's just in a drop-down list. It could be a number. You can do radio buttons, open text for comments, yes, no for just a different type of flag there, checkbox. So all of those are the different types of questions that we have. Let's see if there was one that I think most of them are there. Notice that there are some additional things. So if you are adding for a drop-down list, or let's say multi-pick, we would say, I'm just going to add some of these here. All right, so we separate those with a semicolon, and then those would appear as checkboxes. So let's take a look at that. You would just build out all your questions. There could be hundreds of questions within this, but then once we get all those questions there, let's see what we have here. So we've got a drop-down list, a checkbox, a radio button. Okay, so this shows a good kind of cross-section of the different types there. If I go back out to eWeb, now here I just have a link to a survey page. More than likely this would be a link that is in an email template that Susan gets perhaps, and then clicks on it, and it takes her to this page. But here I'm just going to navigate to the page itself. Well, I'm going to try. Okay, so here it has, this could list several different surveys that are out there, but right now we have the event survey. Please give us feedback on the conference. She's going to click that. My internet's going a little slow today. And then so here you can see the different question types. So here's the groups. So speaker location. Oh, I put, what did I do there? I goofed that up somehow. But here, you can see here the drop-down list. The drop-down list there. Here's a multi-pick where I can choose more than one answer. Radio buttons, single select radio buttons. And here's the one that I added to my question. Very interesting there. And then just a did you get clear answer? So that's kind of a yes/no checkbox there. So so it's as simple as that. And we would save that back. Now, I'm not going to say this. One thing that would happen when we save is that once you save it, then you can't change things about the survey. Which kind of makes sense because you wouldn't want somebody to answer it and then you change the question, right? So just to keep the integrity of the answers, we build that into where you can't change the survey, you can't modify the questions once the first response is in. But once that response comes in, then you could see it from a couple of perspectives. You could see it right from the survey itself. We would see the responder, and I would get a link to all the answers to Susan's questions. We could also see that from her record. So if we would go to the customer record, the customer profile, there is a child form there that would show responses to any survey that she's done within the system.
So does that mean that surveys are not anonymous? Or can you set it so that surveys are anonymous?
You can, there isn't an anonymous setting. There is a way that you can decide to kind of block out different things. For instance, you could have, look at the wrong place. You can hide on any child form. You can decide to hide the data. So if I go back here to our survey, I mean obviously the system has to know who responded, right? So it's going to be connected to that record in the back end. In fact, we also want to make sure in this case there isn't multiple responses, right? We want to make sure there aren't stuff in the ballot. That each person can only get to fill out that survey once. So in that case, the database at least, for one, has to know that Susan is the one that filled this out. Now in terms of the staff knowing, or certain staff knowing but not others, that can be kind of done with security. So you could, for instance, in this child form, we could take out the responder and even not have that display within here. So now this is kind of a back-end view. I apologize for those of you who don't like SQL there, but that's kind of what it looks like behind the scenes.
So the reason I asked that as you're doing it is because, there's certain types of surveys that we're going to do that obviously the responder does not want their response tied to them personally. And so what is baseline for you is that the response is tied to the responder. Is that right?
It is tied to the responder. Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then my other question is, then when you're emailing out, so different from a SurveyMonkey, for example, certainly with any survey, you can ultimately figure out who responded to something. But in a perfect world, for a lot of surveys, you don't want to know. You want aggregated data. So the other question is then if we're to send out reminders for a survey, because it's storing the data on the record, it would be able to only send a reminder to those who have not yet responded.
Correct. That's one of that's the plus side of having a database. No, you can make sure that people only respond once if that's important, and then you can also run queries to remind people, and yet to not give people reminders if they already have it done. Correct. But yes, that is a part of our system that it is connected to the record.
Okay.
Any other questions on surveys? Okay. last bullet that I have here is using prospect lists. So it says they have a large group of individuals they communicate with that don't necessarily have address information, so they don't want to add a bunch of inconsistent data to netFORUM. All right, so that's kind of the perfect example of a prospect list, and sure enough, that is part of the marketing side here. Let me make sure I'm still.
And I know how to import prospect lists, Matt, so you don't have to show that part of it. If you can just talk
Okay.
about how you can kind of manage a prospect list once you've got it in the database.
Okay. So yeah, so the prospect list is just kind of a holding tank there. Initially, it's separate, right? So initially these records, Griff Harrison, Andy Tromboni, Trombino are not really individual records. If I were to look them up, they wouldn't be there. And actually, I take that back. Here, I've already transferred this list, so they would be. But the way to then, if you want to move them in, that's where you would decide to say either check all and bring them all in, or maybe just go down the list and you can even decide which ones are brought in. Once you decide which records, if any, you want to transfer over, then you would transfer active and bring those in. So in terms of marketing to these people, then it's really another query, right? It's a different query tool, because if you run all your individual queries that you've designed from the individual object, these people aren't going to show up initially if they haven't been transferred yet. So in that case, we have to look for something called prospect list detail. It's the prospect list detail that we can list out everyone from a prospect list and then send out an email to them. Is that what you meant by manage? Help guide me here. So is that kind of what you're looking to do?
I mean, I think so. I was just trying to give them an option to be able to handle data that they may not want to create a record in netFORUM. So I guess my question would be, if it's still in a prospect list and you email to that person, is that email still captured that you emailed that person, or is it just sent out an email but no history is captured for it?
Yeah, right. There's no history, because the place that we track that history is on the customer record, on the individual record, and so these guys are just very thin record here that doesn't have a lot of information. There's no way to link email history or purchase history or really anything like that to the prospect. So yeah, if Griff registers for the event based on an email or just based on whatever, we really don't have information on that unless he creates a record himself out on eWeb, or if we transfer him as a record.
But another option that I was just going to say, another option we could do is pull them in as records in netFORUM, but just segment them a certain way with a source code or an individual type to be able to kind of still keep them as a prospect and then be able to correspond with them.
Absolutely. That's a great way to do it. Yeah, and whenever you bring in, always make sure you source code those records so that you know exactly who's, what it was a part of. You can figure out how many people from that list, took a certain action. But yeah, you use your source code. And just I will show you this because we kind of hide this link. But if you look under here, it's listed on mine under More. But if you click Find Prospect Detail, this is where I can say, all right, I want to say, which one was it? Was it membership import? Let's see if this was the one. Okay, that wasn't the same one. But I could say on the detail, show me everyone who's connected to a certain list. And now, even though they're not records in the system, technically, not individual records, I can email to the list. So now I'm using those same tools we talked about earlier with a template, although I don't have any templates connected to this that type. But that I could send them out and market to those people, and technically they're not really even records in the database. So there are times when you might want to do that if you purchase some list and there's maybe a low rate that you think you're going to get in terms of people actually registering, or maybe it's a one-time use kind of a list that you've purchased, and so now you can send out that email and then direct them to the web page to where they could enter in their own information separate from what you have. So once they enter it in there, then you're good. Now you've got them as an individual, and now they've purchased the information, or purchased the product. All right, so that's prospect lists, and we're at 3:30. Any other questions that I hit? I think I hit all of those bullets there for you. Was there anything else that you had questions about, or anything else that I could go over?
Not anything? Nope. Becky, you got anything?
I'm in good shape.
Hey, Matt, what is that customer messaging link above the import file? Customer messaging, is that activity? Down the left-hand side there?
Customer
yeah.
messaging. Oh yeah,
What is
customer
that?
messaging activity. Yeah. So
I was just curious what it was.
this is when there's something, when there's a activity done. I believe this links in from the record. Hang on, I think it's the same thing that we see, just in a different perspective from the individual record. So if you're looking at marketing things from the individual record, typically you're going under the correspondence tab, and okay, so here it says communication, but really it's what we call an activity record. And so the activity table keeps things for like when confirmations are sent. It could be a number of different things there, but that is just another way to see that same information, except not linked to a specific person.
Okay. And then I think there was one more. What is messaging link? What's that? 2 down from that one.
Yeah, good question. So let's see what I have here so far. So these links are, you can create a link in here and then kind of use it on templates to kind of bring it in separately. So let's see if I have an example of that. So here I have created the link. I can pull in source code. This is a nice thing, so it helps you build it, right? So that if you don't know the whole URL and you don't know what the code is, if I want to bring in a source code, just kind of drag it up there and build that URL. And then so there is a way then that you can I'm trying to think if it's from the template designer or. What did I click on? Yeah, I'm back on the site. There's a way to bring in those links. So let me go back here to templates. It's this guy right here. So if you use a link in a lot of different ways throughout your system, then you could put it here as a kind of a defined link that you use over and over again. And then when you bring it out here, it's already there for you, and you can just paste it into the HTML. Or here, I don't know, let me switch back. I think I've got too many sites open here. But yeah, I would. I would create a hyperlink and then make that as the URL of the hyperlink.
Okay.
You can do the same thing with codes too. So if there was another source code I want to add to a certain part of it, maybe I'm building a link here that, or maybe the link has the base of it, but I want to put in a certain source code at the end of that link. It's just the system trying to help you to configure the correct links in your templates.
Makes sense.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, I hope that was helpful to you. If there's any other questions, I guess you can funnel them through Angie, Lucas, but I'm happy to help out. And I don't know if it's the same group. Maybe some of you are here, but I'll be going through the sales module next Tuesday. So that's something on my calendar as well.
Right. I think it'll be the same group with maybe a couple more people.
Okay.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right. Have a great day.
Thank you,
You too.
Thanks. Thank you.